I'm William Harper, 65 years old, and for most of my life, I've built everything I have with my own two hands. I started with nothing and created a company that after decades of hard work is worth millions. More than just wealth, though, I built a legacy, something I could pass down to my son, Jack. Jack was everything to me. He was my pride, my joy, my successor. I raised him to follow in my footsteps, to take over when the time came. I had always assumed that he would be the one to carry on the company, that together we would continue the work I had started. Jack had always been a good kid. He was smart, driven, and for the longest time, we had a good relationship. There was no tension between us, no real conflict. But things began to shift subtly, almost imperceptibly. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. It wasn't that Jack had become distant or openly rebellious. He just started to pull away from me, slowly, over time. It wasn't a dramatic break. It wasn't like he slammed a door in my face or told me he didn't want anything to do with the business. No, it was more subtle than that. The conversations we used to have about the company, about the future, became shorter, less frequent. The affection I had grown used to receiving from him seemed to fade. I'd find him distracted, his mind elsewhere. He'd nod along when I spoke about the company, but there was a coldness in his eyes, a distance that hadn't been there before. But it wasn't until a certain evening, a late-night phone call, that I finally realized something was terribly wrong. It was a Tuesday, about a month ago. I had been sitting in my study, going through some company reports, when I saw Jack's name pop up on my phone. I hadn't heard from him much recently. He had been busy with his new family life, and I understood that. I always told myself it was natural for him to pull away a bit. After all, he was married now, living his own life with Lisa, his wife. But something about that call felt different. There was an urgency in his voice when he picked up. "Dad," he said, his voice shaky, "I need to talk to you." I was taken aback by the tone. "Of course, son. What's going on?" There was a pause on the other end, and when he spoke again, I could hear the hesitation in his words. "It's about the company. I've been thinking about something. I think it's time to sell." I froze. Sell? Sell the company? The business I had worked my entire life to build. The business I had always planned for him to take over. Sell it? I couldn't process the words. "Jack, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rising with confusion and panic. He cleared his throat. "I think it's for the best, Dad. I've been talking to Lisa, and we both feel like it's time to move on. We don't need the company, and it's a good time to sell. We could make a lot of money and invest it in something else, something new. We don't need to keep doing this." His words hit me like a blow to the chest. I felt the air leave my lungs. My head spun. "Jack, this company isn't just a business. It's everything I've worked for. I built this for you, for your future. You're going to sell it? Just like that?" I could hear the discomfort in his voice. "Dad, I'm not doing this to hurt you. It's just, I've been thinking a lot. We don't need this weight on us anymore. I need to start living my life differently. I'm sorry, but this is what I think is best." Best? For whom? I didn't know what was happening to my son. He had always been the one I trusted, the one I counted on to carry this business forward. And now he was telling me he wanted to sell it just like that. I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. "Jack, this isn't just your decision. This is mine too. You can't just throw it all away. We built this together." "I know, Dad," he said, his voice softer now. "But it's my life. I need to think about my future too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just a decision about the company. It was about him, my son, who I had trusted, who I thought would carry on my legacy. This wasn't like him. This wasn't the Jack I had raised. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. My mind raced. Was this really happening? Was my son really ready to walk away from everything I had built? And why did it feel like something was missing? Like there was something I wasn't seeing? I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to process everything. I spoke to my lawyer about the potential sale and tried to understand Jack's reasoning, but nothing made sense. How had he gone from a promising future, someone who was going to take over the family business, to someone who was willing to sell it all away? Then I started to notice something else. It wasn't just the company he was distancing himself from. It was me. I began to ask around, to reach out to a few people in the business world, to colleagues I'd worked with for years. Something felt off, and I needed answers. And that's when I heard the first whisper of the truth. Lisa, my daughter-in-law. I didn't want to believe it at first, but everything started to click into place. Lisa had been behind this decision. She had been the one pushing Jack to sell, to walk away from the business. She had been subtly influencing him for months, telling him it was the right move, telling him they didn't need the company anymore. But why? Why would she want to sell everything we had worked for? After that phone call, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on behind the scenes than I had been made aware of. At first, I had assumed that Jack's decision to sell the company was his own, a move motivated by his desire for a new direction in life. But as the days passed, I began to question that assumption. There was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, something I couldn't ignore. Lisa was involved in this, and she had her own reasons for wanting the company gone. I had always tried to be understanding of Lisa. She was a smart woman, and I had always respected her ambition. But over the years, I had noticed a subtle shift in her behavior. It wasn't anything overt, nothing that would have raised alarm bells at first. It was the little things, the way she would suggest selling off certain assets, the way she would talk about diversifying investments and moving away from the business. It was clear to me now that she had been planting seeds in Jack's mind for a long time. I didn't want to believe it, but everything started to point in one direction. Lisa wasn't just pushing Jack to sell the company because she thought it was a good business decision. She was pushing him to sell it because she had an agenda. I decided to speak with a few people who had worked with Lisa and Jack. I wasn't proud of the idea, but I needed to understand what was really going on. I called an old colleague of mine, David. He had known Jack and Lisa for years, and I trusted him to be honest with me. David, I said when he picked up, I need you to be straight with me. What's really going on with Jack and Lisa? I'm starting to think there's more to this than just a business decision. David paused for a moment, then sighed. You're right, William. It's been building for a while now. I've seen the way Lisa's been pushing Jack, suggesting that the company isn't worth keeping. And I've noticed how she's been getting more involved in business decisions lately, even in areas that have nothing to do with her. I felt my heart sink. So it's not just my imagination? I asked. She's been pushing him to sell all along? David hesitated before answering. She's been planting ideas in his head for months. I think she's trying to take control of everything, William. And I think Jack is too blinded by love to see what's really happening. I felt a surge of frustration. But why, David? Why would she want to destroy everything we've built? Why sell the company? David's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. I don't know all the details, but I have a feeling she's not just in it for the money. She's been talking to a lot of investors, ones who would be interested in taking over the company. She wants to get rid of everything that ties Jack to this legacy, to you. The words hit me like a slap in the face. I had suspected something, but hearing it confirmed was another thing entirely. Lisa wasn't just interested in a clean break from the business. She was setting the stage for something much more manipulative. She had been working in the shadows, slowly turning Jack against me, against the company, against everything that had defined our family for generations. I felt a burning anger rising within me. How had I let it get this far? How had I been so blind to Lisa's true intentions? I had always trusted her, welcomed her into my family, and thought of her as a part of our team. But now, I was starting to see her for what she really was, a manipulator who wanted control at any cost. I needed to find out more, but I also needed to confront Jack. This couldn't wait any longer. I had to talk to him, make him see the truth. But how could I do that without pushing him further away? How could I expose Lisa without causing irreparable damage to my relationship with my son? That night, I sat alone in my study, going over everything I had learned. I had always prided myself on being a good father, on raising Jack to be someone I could trust. But now, I was questioning everything I thought I knew about him and about Liza. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I had to take action. The next morning, I went to Jack's house. It was a Sunday, and I knew he would be home. I called him ahead of time, telling him we needed to talk. When I arrived, he greeted me at the door, his face guarded, but not unwelcoming. I could tell he was nervous. He knew something was coming. "Hey, Dad," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "What's going on? You sounded serious on the phone." "I am serious, Jack," I replied, my voice firm. "We need to talk about the company. And about Lisa." His eyes immediately shifted, his expression faltering. "Dad, we've been over this already. I've made my decision. Selling the company is what's best for us. I didn't waste any time. It's not just about selling the company, Jack. It's about Lisa. I've learned everything I need to know. She's been manipulating you. She's been working behind your back, pushing you to sell because she has her own agenda. And you've been too blinded by your feelings for her to see it." Jack stepped back, clearly taken aback by my words. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice rising with defensiveness. "Lisa's been helping me make decisions. She's been supportive. You don't understand?" "I understand more than you think," I said, my voice steady. "She's been using you to get what she wants, Jack, and you've been letting her." The look on Jack's face shifted, confusion and hurt mingling in his eyes. "Dad, you're wrong. Lisa's not like that. She cares about me." I looked him in the eye, my heart heavy. "I know you want to believe that, son, but you've been manipulated, and it's not too late to stop it." The silence that hung between us was suffocating. Jack stood there, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his face clouded with hurt. I could see the battle inside him. He wanted to believe me, but he also didn't want to confront the woman he had married, the woman who had been a part of his life for years. He had trusted her completely, and the thought that she could have been deceiving him all this time must have been too much to bear. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure how to proceed. I had already exposed Lisa's manipulation, but Jack wasn't ready to hear it. There was too much at stake, too much to untangle. His love for her was blinding him, clouding his judgment. And deep down, I could see that the thought of losing her, of admitting that everything she had said and done had been a lie, was tearing him apart. "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about," Jack finally said, his voice shaky. "Lisa and I have been talking about this for months. She's just trying to help me. We've been making plans together for our future." I could feel the frustration welling up inside me. "You're not seeing it, Jack. She's not trying to help you. She's trying to take everything from you. She's been working behind your back, trying to manipulate you into selling the company, and you're just letting her." I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wasn't ready to hear the truth. Not yet. "No, Dad, that's not true. She's not like that. You don't understand how hard it's been for both of us. We've been thinking about this for a long time. Thinking about it, I repeated, my voice rising. You've been thinking about it, but have you really thought about the consequences? This company isn't just a business, Jack, it's our legacy. My legacy. You're letting her tear it all apart without even realizing it. Jack's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. He was trying to hold on to his beliefs, to the life he had built with Lisa, but I could see the cracks beginning to show. Dad, I don't know what to say, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just want to make the right decision. I don't want to keep fighting over this. I took a step closer to him, trying to soften my tone. Jack, I know you don't want to fight, but you need to see what's happening. You're not making this decision on your own. You've been influenced by Lisa. She's been whispering in your ear, telling you it's the right move. But this isn't just about the business, it's about your future. And you don't have to let her control it. He looked away, his eyes avoiding mine. I don't know what to believe anymore, he muttered. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping us move forward. I placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to steady him. You don't have to keep going down this road, Jack. You have a choice. You can still stop this before it's too late. Jack finally looked at me, his eyes full of confusion and regret. What do you mean, stop it? How can I stop it, Dad? The deal's already in motion. We've been talking to investors. We've already planned it out. It's happening. I could feel the weight of his words, the finality in them. I knew it wasn't going to be easy to undo what had already been set in motion. The deals, the meetings, the plans, they were all in place. But it wasn't too late. I wouldn't let it be too late. Jack, you don't have to go through with it, I said, my voice more urgent now. I've been in business for decades. I know what's at stake. I can help you. We can find another way, a way that doesn't involve selling everything we've built. You don't have to give up your future, your legacy. He shook his head, visibly torn. But Dad, it's all so complicated. I don't know what to do anymore. I've been listening to Lisa. She's been telling me this is the best thing for us, for our future. How do I just walk away from that? I could see the guilt written all over his face, the burden of the decisions he had already made weighing heavily on him. I know it's hard, Jack. I know you're caught in the middle. But you don't have to go down this path. You're stronger than this, and you can still make the right choice. For a moment, we both stood in silence. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of everything we were talking about hanging between us. I wanted to reach out to him, to pull him away from this precipice before he made a choice he couldn't undo. But I also knew that I couldn't force him to see the truth. He had to come to that conclusion on his own. Finally, Jack spoke again, his voice quieter now. I'll think about what you said, Dad, but I don't know if I can go back now. It feels like too much has already been done. I nodded slowly, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Just think about it, Jack. That's all I'm asking. Think about the legacy we've built. Think about what you really want for your future. Don't let anyone, least of all Lisa, make that decision for you. Jack turned away, his face a mixture of frustration and confusion. He needed time. But time was something we didn't have much of. The clock was ticking, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about a business deal. It was about saving my son from a future that had been manipulated by the woman he loved. Spent the next few days thinking about my conversation with Jack. He had promised to think about what I said, but I wasn't sure if he would actually come to see the truth. The man I had raised, the man who had once shared my vision for the company, seemed distant and conflicted. The Jack I knew was slipping away, replaced by someone who was too consumed by his relationship with Lisa to see what was really happening. I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I needed to understand the full scope of what Lisa had been doing. I had already spoken to a few colleagues. and they had confirmed my suspicions that Lisa had been talking to potential buyers for the company. But there was still so much I didn't know. What had she promised them? How far had she gone to convince Jack that selling was the right move? The first step was to dig deeper into the business side of things. I pulled up the company's financial reports and started going over them with a fine-toothed comb. Everything seemed normal at first, but as I examined the documents more closely, I noticed a few red flags. There were emails, conversations, and documents I hadn't seen before, records of meetings that Jack had attended without informing me, names of investors I didn't recognize. Then I found it. A contract hidden deep in the records with a clause I never would have expected. It was an agreement between Jack and a company I'd never heard of, one that had been in talks to purchase a large portion of our assets. But it wasn't just a business deal, it was something much worse. The contract contained a clause that would transfer not just the company's assets, but also key shares, stock options, and ownership of several subsidiaries directly to Lisa, effectively giving her control over parts of the business. My hands trembled as I read the document. This wasn't just about selling. It was about Lisa taking control, piece by piece, until she owned everything. She hadn't just been influencing Jack's decision to sell. She had been setting up her own stake in the company the whole time. She was playing the long game. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I had always thought of Lisa as a smart, ambitious woman, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't ambition, it was greed. And worse than that, it was a betrayal. I immediately contacted my lawyer. I knew I couldn't confront Jack with this information just yet. He was already confused, already conflicted. If I showed him this document, it might push him further into Lisa's arms. I needed to find a way to present the truth without alienating him completely. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't keep this to myself. Jack needed to see what Lisa had been doing. He needed to understand that this wasn't just a business decision. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to take everything away from him, from me, from our family. The next day, I arranged another meeting with Jack. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. I had to show him the truth, no matter how hard it was. When Jack walked into the room, he looked worn out, as if he hadn't been sleeping. His eyes were tired, and there was a heaviness to his posture. He was clearly struggling with the weight of the decisions he was facing, and I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. But there was something else, too, something I hadn't seen before. It was fear. "Jack," I said, trying to steady my voice, "we need to talk again, and this time I'm not going to hold back." He sat down across from me, his eyes avoiding mine. "Dad, I've been thinking. I've been thinking about everything you said, but I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know who to trust." I placed the contract in front of him. "You need to see this, son." He looked at the paper, then back at me. "What is this?" "It's the truth," I said quietly. "This is the contract that Lisa has been hiding from you, Jack. It's a deal she's been working on behind your back. A deal that gives her control over parts of the company, even if you don't realize it. She's not just asking you to sell for the sake of your future. She's setting herself up to own everything." Jack's face drained of color as he read through the document. His hands were shaking, and I could see the realization starting to sink in. I don't understand," he whispered. "Why didn't she tell me about this?" "Because she didn't want you to know, Jack. She didn't want you to see what she was really doing. She's been manipulating you for months, making you think this was all for the best, but it's not. It's all about her getting control, using you as a pawn in her game." Jack's expression changed, his eyes wide with shock. "I never knew. I never saw it. I thought we were just making a smart decision, but I was wrong. She's been playing you, Jack," I said softly, "and she's been playing me too. She doesn't care about this family, about the business. She only cares about what she can take from it. Jack dropped his head into his hands, clearly struggling to process everything. I can't believe I didn't see it. I can't believe I let her do this to me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. It's not too late, Jack. You can still stop it. You can still make things right. But you have to see the truth. You have to realize that this isn't just a business decision. It's a betrayal. He sat in silence for a moment, then looked up at me, his eyes filled with determination. I need to fix this, Dad. I need to make things right. I can't let her destroy everything we've worked for. The air in the room felt thick with tension. I watched Jack as he paced back and forth, his mind clearly racing. I had never seen him so torn, so conflicted. He had always been the one to make decisions quickly and confidently. But now, every step seemed like an agonizing choice. Are you sure about this, son? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Once you confront her, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you know now. Jack stopped pacing and turned to face me, his face a mixture of frustration and resolve. I have to do this, Dad. I can't live in the dark anymore. I have to know why she's been doing this, why she's been lying to me. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. He had been living with this lie for so long, and now that the truth was out, it had shattered everything he believed about his marriage and his future. But this wasn't just about Jack, it was about me, too. Lisa hadn't just manipulated my son. She had been manipulating me for years, using my love for Jack to cover her tracks. Jack's face hardened. I'll talk to her, but I need your help. I need you to be there when I do it. I could hear the desperation in his voice. He was asking me for support, but I knew this wasn't going to be easy for either of us. Confronting Lisa would be a battle, and I wasn't sure either of us were prepared for how far she would go to defend herself. I gave him a reassuring nod. I'll be there, son. Whatever happens, I'm with you. The moment I agreed, I could see Jack's posture change. There was a sense of determination in his eyes, a fire that had been reignited. He was no longer the confused man who had been manipulated by Lisa's charm. He was ready to stand up for himself. We left my study and made our way to Jack's house, where Lisa was waiting. As we drove, I could feel the tension between us. Neither of us spoke, but I knew Jack was trying to find the right words. The confrontation wasn't just about exposing Lisa's lies. It was about reclaiming his future, his identity, and his place in the family business. When we arrived, the house was eerily quiet. Lisa was home, but she was deliberately avoiding us. I could sense that she knew what was coming, but she wasn't ready to face the consequences of her actions. Jack walked up to the front door with purpose, but his steps slowed as we got closer. I could feel his hesitation. Dad, what if I'm wrong? What if I've misunderstood everything? I stopped him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're not wrong, Jack. You've seen the truth now. You can't ignore it. You're doing the right thing, no matter how hard it is. He took a deep breath and nodded, pushing the doorbell. When the door opened, there she was, Lisa. She looked the same as always, calm, collected, her expression neutral. But I could see the flicker of something in her eyes, a recognition that the game was up. She had known this moment would come, and she had been prepared to defend herself, to keep her grip on Jack. But I wasn't sure she was prepared for the full force of what was about to happen. Jack, she said, her voice sweet but strained. What's this about? You look serious. We need to talk, Jack replied, his voice steady but firm. About the company. About everything. Lisa's eyes darted to me, and I saw the faintest trace of irritation cross her face. She had clearly expected me to stay out of this, to let Jack handle it on his own. But she wasn't going to get that luxury. Fine, Lisa said, stepping aside to let us in. But let's keep this civil. We don't need to make a scene. We entered the living room, and Jack sat down, facing Lisa. I took a seat beside him, watching intently. This was it. The moment when the truth would finally come to light. Lisa, Jack began, his voice hardening. I've seen the contracts. I know what you've been doing behind my back. I know what you've been trying to get me to do. You've been manipulating me, and I can't pretend anymore that I don't see it. Lisa's face faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered, her mask of calm slipping back into place. What are you talking about? She asked, trying to play innocent. I've been trying to help you. You know that. Everything I've done has been for us, for our future. I saw Jack's jaw tighten. For your future, you mean? You've been using me, Lisa. You've been talking to investors behind my back. You've been planning to sell the company all along, and you've been making me believe it was my decision. Lisa's eyes flickered with something fear. Anger? She was starting to lose control. I don't know what you think you're trying to prove, Jack, but I've done nothing wrong. Everything I've done was to help us get ahead. You were too. Focused on the past, on what your father built, to see the opportunities we had in front of us. I thought you'd appreciate that. Appreciate it? Jack snapped. You thought I'd appreciate lying to me? You thought I'd appreciate you manipulating me into selling everything I've ever known? Lisa stood up abruptly, her calm facade cracking. You don't understand, Jack. This company is holding you back. You're stuck in the past, stuck trying to live up to your father's expectations. I was only trying to free you from that. By taking everything? Jack asked, standing up now. By destroying everything my father built? You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore, Lisa. The room was thick with tension, and I could see the finality in Jack's eyes. He had made his decision. He was no longer the man who had blindly followed Lisa's plans. He was ready to stand up for himself. Lisa took a step back, her expression shifting from anger to something more dangerous fear. You don't know what you're doing, Jack. You'll regret this. But Jack didn't flinch. No, Lisa, I'm finally doing what's best for me. The following days were a blur of activity. After the confrontation, Jack had become more distant again, retreating into himself. I could see that his mind was racing. He had just confronted the woman he loved, the woman who had been his partner for years. How could he reconcile that with the truth that had come to light? How could he reconcile his love for Lisa with the knowledge that she had been manipulating him, steering him away from the business and everything we had built? Jack was torn, and it broke my heart to see him struggling so much. He had always been a confident, decisive young man, but this betrayal had shattered him in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. The person he trusted most, the person he had chosen to build a life with, had been the one to tear it all down. I gave him space, of course. He needed it. But there were moments when I wanted to reach out, to help him understand that the road to recovery wouldn't be easy, that he would have to confront not just Lisa, but his own guilt, his own feelings of betrayal. He had to accept that the life he thought he was building had been a lie. It wasn't long before Lisa made her next move. She wasn't the type to go down without a fight. She had always been a master manipulator, and now, with Jack reeling from the truth, I knew she would do whatever it took to regain control. It started with a phone call. One evening, as Jack and I were sitting in the living room, trying to sort through the mess Lisa had left behind, my phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but I picked it up anyway. William, came Lisa's voice on the other end, sharp and cold as ever. We need to talk. I felt a surge of anger, but I held it back, trying to keep my voice steady. We've talked enough, Lisa. There's nothing more to say. She didn't take no for an answer. I think you're wrong about this. I think you're making a huge mistake, and so is Jack. You're pushing him away, and you're going to regret it. I'm trying to help him, and you're standing in the way. I let out a frustrated sigh. You're not helping him, Lisa. You're manipulating him. And I won't stand by and let you tear everything apart." There was a brief silence on the other end before she spoke again, her tone colder now. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my interests. And I'm not going to let you ruin Jack's future because of your stubbornness." The words hung in the air like a threat, and I could hear the resolve in her voice. She wasn't going to let this go, and I knew that, even though Jack had made his choice, the battle wasn't over. Lisa wasn't going to give up without a fight. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with frustration. "That's it, Jack," I said, turning to him. "She's not going to back down. She's going to keep coming after us, after everything we've built. We need to be prepared for what's next." Jack sat quietly, his face tense. "I don't know what to do, Dad. I don't know how to make this right. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I feel like I've lost everything." I could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt gnawing at him. "You haven't lost everything, son. You've made the right choice. The first step is always the hardest. But now we have to focus on what comes next. We can't let her tear us apart." But even as I said the words, I knew that Lisa wasn't going to make it easy. She wasn't going to just walk away, not without trying to destroy everything in her path. And I had no doubt she would go to any lengths to get what she wanted. The next day, Jack and I sat down with our lawyer to start the process of protecting the company from any further interference. We needed to make sure Lisa didn't have access to any more assets or decisions. But even as we worked on the legal aspects, I could sense the weight of it all on Jack's shoulders. "Are you sure about this?" I asked him as we sat in the lawyer's office. "I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing." Jack nodded slowly, but his face was a mask of uncertainty. "I don't know, Dad. Part of me still feels like I should have listened to her. Maybe selling the company was the right move." I could feel my frustration rising, but I held it back. "Jack, we've been over this. You're making the right decision. Don't let her manipulate you into thinking otherwise. You're doing this for you, for your future, not for her." He looked down at the documents on the table, his fingers tracing the edges absently. I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't know if I made the right call." "You've made the right call, Jack," I said firmly. "You've chosen your future. Now it's time to protect it. We'll fight this together. You're not alone in this." As the days went by, it became clear that Lisa wasn't going to give up easily. She kept pushing, trying to get Jack to meet with investors, to continue with the sale of the company. She tried to convince him that it was the best thing for both of them, that they could make more money, live a better life. But Jack wasn't buying it anymore. He was starting to see the truth, even if it was hard to accept. But the real test was yet to come. Lisa wouldn't back down without a fight. And when she realized she couldn't manipulate Jack any longer, she would come at us with everything she had. The battle was just beginning. The tension between Jack and Lisa reached a boiling point. As Lisa pushed harder, Jack faced the hardest decision of his life. Would he continue to fight for his legacy, or would he fall back into her manipulative grasp? Every day felt like a battle. Jack and I spent countless hours working to protect the business, to undo the damage Lisa had caused. But with each passing day, the pressure mounted. Jack's uncertainty weighed on him like a heavy burden, and no matter how many times I reassured him, he couldn't shake the doubt that kept creeping in. Lisa was relentless. She had become more aggressive in her pursuit of the company, sending emails, making phone calls, and trying to convince Jack that selling was still the right thing to do. Every time Jack hesitated, she was there, ready to swoop in with promises of a bright, new future that didn't involve the weight of the family business. She had a way of making it sound so appealing: freedom, wealth, a fresh start. It was hard not to be tempted. One afternoon, I went over to Jack's house to check in on him. The phone calls and meetings had been endless, and I could see how tired he was. He wasn't just physically exhausted, he was mentally drained, caught in a tug of war between the truth and the lies that Lisa had been feeding him. When I arrived, Jack was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers before him. He didn't even look up as I walked in. I could see his mind was elsewhere. "Jack," I said gently, sitting across from him. "We need to talk." He looked up, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I know, Dad. I'm just trying to figure out what to do next. I don't know how to handle all this." I could see the desperation in his eyes. "You're not alone in this, son. We've been through a lot, but we're going to get through this too. You don't have to make this decision alone." He nodded, but didn't speak. I could tell he was torn between doing what was right and giving in to the pressure that Lisa had been putting on him. I hated seeing him this way. This wasn't the son I had raised, the son I had always believed would carry on the family business. "You're not weak for questioning this, Jack," I said softly, "but you have to trust yourself. You've built something with your own hands. This company is part of who you are, and you don't need to sell it just to move forward." Jack's hands trembled as he picked up one of the papers in front of him. "I know, Dad, but what if she's right? What if selling is the best thing for us? For me?" His voice cracked as he spoke. I reached out, placing my hand on his. "Jack, selling isn't the answer, and you know that. Lisa has been feeding you lies, using your doubts to manipulate you. She wants you to think that selling is the only way out, but that's not true. You have more options than she's letting you see." Jack pulled his hand away from mine, standing up abruptly. "I don't know what to think anymore, Dad. I've been listening to her for so long, and now I feel like everything is falling apart." I stood up too, moving toward him. "I know it's hard, son, but you're stronger than this. You have to see what she's been doing. She's been pulling the strings all along. She's not the one who should be making decisions for you, for your future." Jack was quiet for a long time, his eyes fixed on the floor. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "But what if I lose everything? What if I'm wrong, and I let the company slip through my fingers?" I stepped closer to him, speaking with the calm certainty I hadn't felt in weeks. "You're not going to lose everything. You're just taking control back. You've already made the hardest decision by seeing the truth. Now it's time to stand firm, to protect what's yours." Jack looked up at me, and for the first time in days, I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I don't want to lose you, Dad. I don't want to let her destroy everything." "You won't," I said, placing my hand on his shoulder. "You have the power to change things. Don't let her control your future. It's your life, Jack. You get to decide how it goes from here." But even as I said the words, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Jack needed to confront Lisa again, to put his foot down and make it clear that he wouldn't be manipulated any longer. That wasn't going to be easy. Lisa wasn't the type of person who would take rejection quietly. If she felt cornered, if she felt like she was losing control, I knew she would go to extreme lengths to keep Jack under her thumb. That night, Jack sat in silence for a long time, his mind racing. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking about the life he had built with Lisa, the years they had spent together. It wasn't easy to just walk away from all of that, to accept that she had been manipulating him from the start. But he had to face it. He had to realize that his future wasn't about keeping her happy. It was about taking control of his own life again. "Tomorrow, I'm going to confront her," Jack said suddenly, his voice steady. "I have to. I can't keep going like this." I nodded, feeling a surge of pride for my son. "I'll be there with you, son. You don't have to do this alone." The next day, we headed to their house. The tension between Jack and Lisa had been building for weeks, but this time it was different. Jack was no longer unsure. He had made up his mind, and he was ready to stand up to her, no matter what it took. When we arrived, Lisa was waiting for us. A cold smile on her face, as if she knew exactly what was coming. "Jack," she said, her voice smooth, "I've been waiting for you. We need to talk about your decision." Jack stood tall, his expression hard. "We do need to talk, Lisa, but not about the company. Not about selling it. I'm done listening to you." Lisa's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "You don't know what you're doing, Jack. You're throwing away everything we've worked for." "No, Lisa," Jack said firmly. "I'm throwing away your plans, not mine." The silence in the room grew heavier with each passing second. Jack's words hung in the air like a challenge, and I could see the tension building inside Lisa. She had always prided herself on controlling the narrative, on steering the people around her in the direction she wanted. But today, she wasn't in control. Jack was. "You're making a huge mistake, Jack," Lisa said, her voice cool, but there was a flicker of panic in her eyes. "This company is holding you back. You've spent your entire life working for it, but look where it's gotten you. Stuck, miserable, chained to a legacy that you don't even want. You're not free, not truly." Jack stood up straighter, his expression resolute. "I'm not stuck, Lisa. I was stuck when I was letting you dictate my every move. I was stuck when I let you convince me that selling the company was the only way forward. But I'm done. I'm done letting you control me. This company is part of who I am, and I'm not going to let you take it away from me." The words hit Lisa harder than I expected. I could see the anger flash in her eyes as she stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. "You think this is about the company, Jack?" She spat. "This isn't just about the company. This is about power. I wanted control, and you let me have it. You let me convince you that this was the best thing for both of us. But now, you're throwing it all away." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You didn't want control for both of us, Lisa. You wanted control for yourself. You didn't care about me, about the business. You just wanted to take everything." Her face twisted with frustration, but she tried to regain her composure. "You're being dramatic. You don't understand the bigger picture. You're letting your father manipulate you into thinking you have a choice. But you don't. You're too far gone." That was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when Lisa revealed the full extent of her manipulation. She had never truly cared about Jack, about our family, about anything except her own ambitions. "I see you for what you are, Lisa," I said, stepping forward. "You've been using Jack, manipulating him for your own gain. You thought you could take everything we've built. But it's not going to happen. Not anymore." For a moment, Lisa said nothing. She just stared at me, her eyes burning with resentment. It was clear that she hadn't expected me to stand up to her, not after all these years. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to let her tear apart everything I had worked for. And I wasn't going to let her control my son any longer. Jack turned to me, his face a mixture of guilt and determination. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I should have listened to you." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not too late, son. We're going to fix this. Together." Jack turned back to Lisa, his voice calm but firm. "I don't want you in my life anymore, Lisa. I don't want your manipulation, your lies, your control. I'm done." Lisa's face twisted with fury. "You think you can just walk away from me? From everything we've built together? You're nothing without me, Jack. I've made you who you are." "You didn't make me, Lisa," Jack said, his voice rising with clarity. "I made myself, and I don't need you to define me anymore." For a moment, there was silence. Lisa seemed to be weighing her options, trying to figure out how to turn the tables. But Jack's words had cut through her, and she realized that her power over him was slipping away. "You'll regret this, Jack," she said coldly, her face pale with fury. "You'll regret turning your back on me." "I don't think so," Jack replied, his voice steady. "This is the best thing I've done for myself in a long time." Lisa turned on her heel, her expression one of pure contempt. "Fine," she said bitterly. "If you want to ruin everything, that's your choice. But remember, you'll be nothing without me. And when this falls apart, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." With those words, she stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The sound of it echoed through the empty room, and for a moment there was only silence. Jack and I stood there, looking at the door, unsure of what came next. But one thing was clear. We had won. Lisa had lost her grip. Jack had made the choice to take control of his life, his future, and his legacy. We weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. Jack had stood up for himself, and no matter what happened next, I knew that he had the strength to rebuild. After the confrontation, the weight of everything started to settle. Lisa had walked away, but the damage wasn't gone. Jack had made the right choice, but the real challenge was ahead, rebuilding trust, both in himself and in the family business that had been shaken to its core. The days following Lisa's departure were a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. For the first time in a long time, Jack and I could breathe again, free from the tension and manipulation that had been hanging over us. But while the immediate pressure had been lifted, we both knew that the hard work was just beginning. I could see it in Jack's eyes every time he walked into the office. The familiar weight of responsibility hung on his shoulders again, but this time it wasn't just about continuing what I had built. It was about reclaiming his future and building a new path for himself, one that didn't involve Lisa, her control, or the lies that had been planted in his mind. The first step was addressing the damage that had been done to the business. We had lost valuable time while Lisa worked behind the scenes, manipulating Jack into making decisions that weren't in the company's best interest. And now, the company was at a crossroads. There were contracts that needed to be re-examined, partners to be reassured, and a whole mess of decisions that would need to be untangled. But none of that mattered if Jack wasn't ready to face the reality of what had happened. "Are you okay?" I asked him one afternoon as we sat together in my office, going over the company's finances. "I know it's a lot to process, but we have to keep moving forward." Jack sat back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know, Dad. I thought I was doing what was best. But now it feels like everything's a mess. I've been so caught up in what Lisa wanted that I didn't even see how far things had gone. I didn't see the damage until it was too late. I could see the guilt eating away at him. You weren't the only one fooled, Jack. You didn't know what she was doing behind your back. And now we have to deal with the fallout together. This isn't on you alone." "But I let her take over," he said quietly. "I let her take control. I should have seen it. I should have fought back sooner." I placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to reassure him. "Jack, you didn't let anything happen. You were blinded by love, by trust. She used that against you. But that's over now. You're seeing the truth. And that's what matters." For the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of hope in Jack's eyes. He wasn't completely free of the burden yet, but I could tell that he was starting to regain his sense of purpose. He was ready to fight for the company, for his future, and for the legacy we had built together. We spent the next few weeks carefully undoing the damage. We restructured some of the agreements that Lisa had pushed forward, renegotiated contracts, and reassured investors that the company was still in good hands. But while the business was slowly starting to stabilize, Jack was still struggling with the emotional aftermath. He had to come to terms with his own mistakes, with the fact that he had allowed himself to be manipulated. And that was no easy thing. One evening, Jack and I sat together in the living room, drinking coffee and reflecting on everything that had happened. He seemed more at ease, but there was still a deep sadness in his eyes. Dad, I never thought it would come to this. I never thought I'd be the one to lose sight of what was important. You weren't the only one, son, I said, my voice soft. I was too caught up in the business to see what was happening in front of me. I missed the signs too. But the important thing is that you see it now. You're not stuck anymore. Jack nodded slowly. I still don't know what to do about Lisa. I know I made the right choice to walk away, but I don't know how to get past it. How do I forgive myself for not seeing the truth? I leaned forward, my gaze steady. You don't have to forgive yourself right away. Healing takes time, but you can forgive yourself eventually. What's important is that you've made the choice to stand up for yourself, to protect what's yours. And that's something I'm proud of. Jack smiled faintly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. I'm starting to believe that. It feels like I've been walking through fog for so long, but now I feel like I can finally see clearly. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Jack was taking back control of his life, one step at a time. He was learning to trust himself again, and that was the foundation of everything that would come next. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments of guilt, and Lisa would undoubtedly try to cause trouble again, even from a distance. But Jack wasn't alone anymore. He had me by his side, and together we would rebuild everything we had lost. But the most important thing was this. Jack had made the decision to take control of his future. He wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Lisa, take that away from him. It had been months since the confrontation with Lisa, and slowly but surely, Jack had begun to regain his footing. The business was back on track. The damage Lisa had caused was being undone, and Jack was finally taking control of his destiny. But even though the immediate crisis had passed, there were still emotional scars that needed to heal. Jack and I had spent countless hours working side by side to bring the company back to its former glory. But as we closed one chapter, we were beginning to open another. The weight of what had happened, the manipulation, the betrayal, it all still lingered in Jack's mind. And while the business was on solid ground, Jack knew that rebuilding himself, finding peace and confidence again, was going to take longer. One afternoon, we sat together in my office, surrounded by papers, contracts, and plans for the future. But there was something different in the air, this time a sense of quiet resolution. Jack seemed calmer than I had seen him in months, his posture more relaxed, his eyes clearer. "Dad," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking. About everything. About the company. About Lisa. About what I want for myself." I sat back, my eyes watching him carefully. "What are you thinking, son?" "I've spent so much time trying to live up to everyone else's expectations," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been trying to make the right choices, trying to build something that was good for all of us. But I never took the time to think about what I really wanted. And I think it's time I start doing that." I felt a swell of pride. "That's the right choice, Jack. You've spent enough time trying to please others. Now it's time to do what's best for you." He looked out the window as if deep in thought. "I want to keep the business. I want to rebuild it, but not just for the sake of the company. I want to build something that means something to me. I don't want to live in the shadow of the past anymore. I want to create my own path forward." I smiled, knowing that Jack had finally found his clarity. "That's the most important thing you can do. It's your life, Jack, and you're the one who gets to choose where it goes." He nodded, then turned to me, his eyes more confident now. "I've been thinking about bringing in new people, new ideas. Maybe even diversifying the business a bit, expanding into other areas. But whatever I do, I want it to be something I believe in." "That's exactly what you should do," I said. "And I'll be right here, helping you. We're in this together." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope for the future. Jack was finally stepping into his own, no longer bound by the manipulation of others. He was ready to create his own legacy. And I knew that whatever happened next, the company would be in good hands. Later that evening, Jack and I went out for dinner, just the two of us. It felt like old times again, back when we could talk about the future without any tension hanging over us. I could see how far Jack had come, how much he had grown over the past few months. He wasn't the same man who had been manipulated by Lisa. He was stronger now, more confident in who he was and what he wanted. "I can't thank you enough, Dad," Jack said, lifting his glass. "If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be. You never gave up on me." I smiled, raising my own glass. "You never gave up on yourself, Jack. That's what matters." We clinked our glasses, a symbol of everything we had been through and everything that lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly optimistic about the future. The business was back on track, but more importantly, my son was back on track. He had found his way, and now he was ready to lead on his own terms. As we walked out of the restaurant that evening, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges. There would still be bumps along the way, still struggles to face. But one thing was certain. Jack had learned the most important lesson of all, that his future was in his hands. And no one, not even Lisa, could take that away from him. The battle was over. The future was his to shape. And as we walked into the night, I knew that the legacy we had built together was stronger than ever, because it wasn't just about the company. It was about family. It was about trust. And it was about never giving up, no matter the cost. Authors note this story is about reclaiming what is rightfully yours, whether it's a business, a legacy, or a sense of self. Jack's journey was one of growth, learning to stand up for himself and fight back against the manipulation that had once controlled his life. The real victory wasn't just saving the company. It was about restoring the trust and integrity that Lisa had tried to destroy. The journey was tough, but in the end, Jack emerged stronger, and his future, both personally and professionally, was brighter than ever.